I've been waiting for this one to come out, and he released it today. Andrew released a video. It's a short one, but he released a video regarding the federal charges that have been levied against Don Lemon. He did. He put out a video about the charges that he's gonna have to contend with. I'm guessing he's going to outline what the charges are, why they are being applied, and how successful they might be in court. That is my guess is what he's talking about. So again, just like with the Angry Cops video, we're not focusing on anything politically related. We're not focusing strictly on ideology. We are focusing on the law. That is the purpose of this. We are looking at legally, did Don Lemon violate the law, how he violated the law, and what the consequences for that could be. Okay, just prefacing it, just like with the Angry Cops video, where we basically examined the crime scene and we did an investigation into the facts of the crime scene. We're doing that here. We're investigating the facts of the criminal charges. All right. And for those of you who don't know, Don Lemon is that quote unquote journalist who participated in the terrorist attack on the church in St. Paul, Minneapolis, where rioters / protesters stormed into the church, terrorized the parishioners, terrified children, prevented parents from going to their children, apparently broke a woman's arm. Apparently, in this attack, a woman's arm was broken. So, which I did not know about that. So there's actually a physical injury that was sustained by these rioters storming this church. Don Lemon was there claiming to be a journalist when he was actually, where it's charged that he was participating in the planning and actually committed the crime of trespass while this was occurring, because he refused to leave the church when he was ordered to by the pastor. So he actually did commit a crime, which is why the First Amendment doesn't apply to him anymore. So let's see what Legal Mindset has to say about this.
Don Lemon has been criminally indicted in Minnesota. We're going to get that today on Legal Mindset. We teach you to be your own judge. Of course, I'm Andrew Esquire, American attorney. This is a fast facts video, the quick and dirty version of the latest legal news. We have a little bit of a new format today. So if you like that, you like the format, make sure you let me know in the comments below. So let's get right into it with the facts. First of all, we have our defendant here, former.
Hang on. Let me move out of the way. Hang on. I do not want to obstruct Andrew's PP. And let me move you guys just for this react. I will put you guys up here. You'll be blocking Andrew a little bit, but that's okay.
Newscaster Don Lemon, who was part of a organization, part of a group that led anti-ICE protesters into a church worship service. Now, originally they had tried to indict him separately. However, they've gone again and done this, and that's been led, of course, by Harmeet Dillon and the plaintiffs of the DOJ, who have brought federal criminal charges against him successfully now in court. So let's get into what those mean. We have the actual...
And by the way, I saw on Twitter, they have arrested at least 2 or 3 more people that were a part of this riot that are not on this list. They are starting to round them all up. They are getting names, they're getting warrants, they're rounding them up, and they're charging them in court. They're charging them criminally. They are grabbing them up. It's Pokemon time. Gotta catch them all.
Indictment here, and you see he's named Don Ronaldo Lemon along with 9 other individual defendants, 2 of which are redacted by the court, and that's under 3 separate criminal charges. So we're going to get into those different charges that are part of 2 separate counts. So they're charging the as 3 charges, but there's 2 counts. The first is 28 USC 241, which is conspiracy against rights. And the next is 18 USC 248, the FACE Act, of which they include 18 USC 2A, which is aiding and abetting. So essentially, they say under this act, even if he's not the principal, even if he's not the person that led the way, he's not the exact one who's in charge, he still aided and abetted, and that makes him liable.
Yes, he
under
did.
18 USC 2. So let's get into the actual meat, the substance of this. What does conspiracy of rights means first? Well, there's 9 co-conspirators, including the protest organizers, and they are charged with a whopping 29 different overt actions, which are possible to convict.
Yeah. Okay. This is something we didn't see. When I went through the indictment, I don't think we saw all of these different. Well, no, actually, no. It's okay. It's 29 different possible actions to commit this. Okay, no, we did go through this. We did go through this on the indictment. This was just a different. Okay, I thought this was 29 different crime. He was saying crime. No, it's different actions. So we did go through. When I actually went through the indictment, we went through all of this is the bullet points. We went through it in detail on the indictment, but this is the bullet points of all those things that I read off when I read the indictment.
Important to note here is that it really only takes one. So of these 29 things, if they can get them on one, just one, they can make a conviction here. And that's what's really important. And that's what makes this case very difficult in the position of Don Lemon, because he's got to defend against all of these things and say, hey, look, I didn't do any of them and none of them were me. I had no liability here. That's a very, very tough fight.
And in this bullet points, I can see at least 2 things actually, sorry, I can see 3 bullet points and this is not all 29 actions, but I can see 3 points in these bullet points that would apply to Don Lemon specifically. Gathering physically to conspire to block service when he got in the pastor's face and shoved the microphone in his face. There's one. Entering and disrupting the church service. He was a part of that. Despite the fact that he was trying to proclaim First Amendment rights as a journalist, he basically entered and disrupted the church service. That's part of the criminal act of what he's being charged with, of violating civil rights, because praying in a church is protected by the First Amendment. So he basically, by joining in entering and disrupting the church service, he committed an act of a civil rights violation by preventing all of the parishioners, especially the pastor, from exercising their First Amendment right of religion. That's number 2. And then physically obstructing service. He got in the pastor's face and physically obstructed the pastor from doing anything. So of the and this is only a fraction of the 29 actions that are listed. So of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bullet points, Don Lemon did 3 of them by himself. By himself, Don Lemon did 3 of these actions, which violated the civil rights of the people in that church. And by the way, I'm seeing all kinds of people that are trying to post things. There's in particular, the guy, who is it? The guy that does TMZ. I can't even remember his fucking name. The guy that does TMZ, is the head of TMZ or something, actually put out a video on Twitter talking about how, this is so dangerous. It's, talking about how politically they're arresting journalists and how this is very chilling because they're arresting journalists. And I saw Kirsche reacting to it. I watched Kirsche react to this TMZ guy's video about how this is so dangerous and it's silencing journalists and everything. And the whole time I'm sitting there watching this, I'm going, Kirsche, say it. For the love of God, say it. Say it. Say it. And she never said it. I'm a little disappointed because the fact is, what the TMZ guy is deliberately not talking about is the fact that Don Lemon, in his actions of being a quote-unquote journalist, actually committed civil rights violations against multiple people. She actually broke the law, which at that point eliminates any protections he has under the First Amendment as a quote unquote journalist. And I'm actually kind of disappointed that Kirsche did not point that out, because that is a very key distinction. If Don Lemon, and this is where I kind of give me, if Don Lemon just followed them in and was just like recording what they were doing and didn't actually inject himself into it, and he just had his cameraman and Don Lemon was just standing there like just reporting on it, not actually getting involved, just standing separate, reporting on it, describing what was happening, and just had the cameraman panning around. And if that's all he did, maybe he could have made the argument of, First Amendment journalism. He was there to, excuse me, to report on the event in question. He was actually conducting in journalistic activities. Maybe he could put that argument. The problem is he went beyond that. He went beyond that, got in the pastor's face, shoved the microphone in his face, got like intruded on his personal space, and ignored the pastor when the pastor said, "I want all of you to leave." And he ignored that and said, "Nope, I'm going to keep asking you questions." At which point he committed a criminal act of trespassing. So because Don Lemon actually injected himself into the events that were happening, he voided his protections as a quote journalist. There's a reason why I keep saying quote journalist, because he voided his protections of the First Amendment because he injected himself into it, because he committed a crime during this event. Any protections that he would have been afforded by the First Amendment are now gone. And I wish Kirsche had pointed that out when she was reacting to the TMZ guy talking about journalists are supposed to be protected under the First Amendment, blah, blah, frickety, blah. I wish she'd said that. I said that when we were going through the indictment, and I'm saying it now. He is not protected by the First Amendment because of the way he conducted himself with his, quote, journalism. He committed an actual crime in service of being a journalist, and therefore his protection by the First Amendment has become null and void because of that very reason. This is not an attack against journalism by arresting him. He sacrificed his First Amendment protections behaving in the way he did and by committing a criminal act during this event. And it is simple as that.
So what do those things include? Well, they're things like posting on Instagram. So when you're releasing information on Instagram, on social media,
Harvey
that is
something,
what they call
yes.
an overt act.
Wait, yeah, Harvey something is a TMZ guy, which, by the way, maybe he should stick to basically journaling. He said he was a journalist for like 15 years before doing TMZ. Yeah, maybe he should stick to, videoing vets doing emergency care during a volcanic eruption. Maybe he should stick to doing that. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go watch the movie Volcano. He was in that, being a journalist, reporting on vets caring for pets while volcanoes erupting in the background.
Instagram. So when you're releasing information on Instagram, on social media, that is what they call an overt action, something you're openly taking an act that goes towards the crime. You might have other things such as gathering physically to conspire, them kind of doing a little team huddle beforehand and saying, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. This is exactly what we're going to do. That's conspiring as well. You've got live streaming the Don Lemon show. That is explicitly mentioned in the criminal complaint, that the live streaming of the show was part of this criminal conspiracy. Then you've got stating they were keeping the target secret. I'm going to show you.
And I'm going to hazard a guess that they're injecting the live streaming the Don Lemon show. I'm guessing this was put into the indictment because the prosecution may be using that as what's her face that was in charge of this. I'm going to hazard a guess that what the prosecution is planning on doing is saying that the head of this attack conspired with Don Lemon for him to live stream what was happening in order to gin up support for people, for like-minded people, so other people would do the same thing as they were doing. So using it sort of as conspiring to use the live stream not for journalism but for propaganda for other individuals to do the same thing to other churches. That is going to be my guess as to why they have the live streaming included in the indictment against him.
On the next slide, where Don Lemon himself was part of this, where Don Lemon himself said, hey, I know what's going on. I know what the target is. I know what the location is. I am not going to say it. So he said openly, I know what it is. We're keeping it secret. That is not journalism. That is criminal conspiracy. Next, you've got entering and disrupting the church service. That's very straightforward. That's something, hey, look, physically you went into there and you disrupted the service. That's the FACE Act. And we'll get into what that means exactly.
There it is.
You've got gesturing aggressively and hostilely. Remember, there were women, children, the elderly in this service. They were going out there targeting people, targeting vulnerable people like children and the elderly, and going out and committing this criminal conspiracy. They were also physically obstructing the service. They didn't just come in there and yell and leave. No, they actually obstructed the service to the point where it could not go on. And
they obstructed the service, and they obstructed parents from getting to their children. They also did that. They obstructed the actual service in question, but then they obstructed the pathway for parents to go claim their children upstairs in like a daycare facility within the church. So yeah, this was, I said this before when we've talked about this before. It is by sheer luck. It wouldn't be kidnapping, but it would be unlawful detainment. Not kidnapping, because they were not removed from the location. Child endangerment, yes. Kidnapping, no. Unlawful detainment. That's where it could be classified. Now, I think they're foregoing the child endangerment and unlawful detainment because, or false imprisonment, yeah. I think they're foregoing that because the federal charges are superseding the more localized charges. Andrew might talk about that. Andrew might talk about why why that we only have these two charges, if there could be more charges pending. We'll see. Andrew might have something to say. But I will say it is like highly fortuitous that what happened at this church didn't turn more bloody. It is incredibly lucky that none of those parents with beast mode, when they were obstructing them from getting to the kids or actually terrifying their kids, they are really lucky that none of those parents decided to go beast mode or mama bear mode and start beating the fuck out of them for scaring the kids. They are damn lucky that didn't happen. Because if that had happened, we'd be talking about something else entirely.
Then you've got blocking a minivan of children. This is there's many other acts. This is not all 29, but one that I think is particularly disgusting because they tried to take this out, not just on, the pastor or adult men or whatever else. They took this out on children. They went out there knowing this was a bus of children and went out there and obstructed it. Absolutely monstrous behavior by these. Then you've got these particular overt acts I want to point to from the actual criminal complaint, but we've got Don Lemon here, and let me read this out. During a discussion with Defendant Armstrong at the pre-op meeting, Defendant Lemon thanked Defendant Armstrong for what she was doing and assured her that he was, quote, not saying what's going on, i.e. was not disclosing the target of the operation. Defendant Armstrong explained that Operation Pull-Up was a quote-unquote clandestine operation in which she and other agitators would, quote, show up somewhere that is a key location where the targets don't expect us.
This is an operation that is secret.
This is Operation Pull Up, more of a clandestine operation. We show up somewhere. They don't expect us to come there, and then we disrupt business as usual.
And we disrupt business as usual. That's what we're about to go do now. And Defendant Lemon said he would see her there. So it
And by the way, first saying that they were intending to disrupt business, that's criminal. That's criminal. That is an intent. That is going to show in the courts. She fucked herself by saying that on the recording. And she truly fucked herself there, because she said on video recording that there was intent to commit a crime. That's a key portion. That's a key part of any criminal charge, is you need to establish intent to commit a crime. She just did that by saying that into Don Lemon's camera, and Don Lemon live streaming it and it being recorded, and basically providing evidence that there was absolute intent to commit a crime. That's going to fuck all of them.
Shows Lemon knew exactly what was going on. And then another overt act. So once again, this is one. They can convict just on this, enough for a conviction. But look, we've got another overt act 7. Before heading to the church to join his co-conspirators, defendant Lemon advised his live stream audience that we're going to head to the operation. Again, we are not going to give any of the information away. That is, i.e. operational details. So we see right there with these things, absolutely knowing what's going on and not disclosing it. That is, ladies and gentlemen, conspiracy. And that gets into the FACE Act. The FACE Act is a freedom of access to clinic entrances. Now, yes, the title would make you believe this just applies to abortion clinics, but that's not true. It actually protects both abortion clinics and churches. So it's kind of even-handed. We got something that, hey, the left likes that. Well, the right likes churches, right? So we're going to protect both. We're going to protect abortion clinics.
Seriously? Kirby, I'm analyzing here, Kirby. Later.
Just the same, equal-handedly, with we're going to protect churches. Very fair and I think fairly applied and fairly balanced criminal act. And it criminalizes physical obstruction to intimidate, interfere with, or injure persons. So whether or not you're going to an abortion clinic or whether or not you're going to a church service, someone cannot physically obstruct or interfere with people that are going to access those locations. So if you're going in there to going to the abortion clinic for whatever, and these clinics do for other reproductive health reasons, you might be going to them. You might be getting a checkup or some sort of STD test, whatever else. You cannot be physically obstructed, intimidated, or interfere with. And if you're going to a church service, you can't be physically obstructed, intimidated, or interfere with. Very, very fair. And for first-time offenders, because remember, Don Lemon would not be a repeat offender. He's not someone who's, got a rap sheet that's leading all the way into Tulsa. This is something where you've got up to 6 months of prison or a $10K fine, right? So you've got up to 6 months of prison. That's real prison time, or a $10K fine. Most likely they would give him a fine, right? So he most likely would be fined under this, but it is possible he could get some prison time. So prison time is not off the table for Lemon. So what does this mean? Well,
and honestly, I could see the prosecution pushing for prison time for every single one of them. This case is, I know, he's got the typo. He's got time instead of fine. I know, I saw that too. Right? But I suspect that the prosecution, if they're able to secure a guilty verdict, they are going to push for prison time. They're going to push for the prison time because they're going to want to make an example. They are 100% going to want to make an example of these people. 100%. They're going to. So they're going to want basically use this as a showcase for if you want to, the next time somebody wants to basically commit a terror attack on a church, and it still annoys the crap out of me that this is not being properly labeled as a terrorist attack, because it is. This was an act of domestic terrorism. I really hate that it's not being labeled as that, but they're going to use him and everybody involved that they can get on the charges for this. They're going to want to use that they're going to make an example out of him. They're going to want to basically say to the country, you want to attack a church like this, you're going to end up in the box. You're going to end up in a 4x6 cell. They're going to push for that, I guarantee. Because otherwise, if it's a fine, here's the problem. If it's a fine that they get, what do you want to bet? That if they secure a guilty verdict and, pardon me, all they get is a fine, the next day, there are going to be GoFundMes. Even with Don Lemon, who may have the money, I don't even know, because since he's been fired by CNN, I have no idea how much money he has. But Every single one of them, if they get a fine, the next day, every single one of them is going to have a GoFundMe go up on the internet. Every single one of them. And you know what's going to happen? It'll get funded in a heartbeat. Does it violate the TOS? Does it violate TOS? Okay. All right. Well, if it violates TOS and they can't do it, good. I want them to come out of their own pockets. But in the end, what's going to happen? How much time to get left? Okay, I'll let him finish off, and then I'll make my closing thoughts.
Time. So prison time is not off the table for Lemon. So what does this mean? Well, I think this is an excellent test for application of the FACE Act. And I also think particularly for journalists, because Lemon is going to still use the journalism defense. He's using it all over social media. That's the clear criminal defense here, is to say, this is journalism. I was a journalist. The problem is knowing you were going to do something criminal. When he appeared to have knowledge of a planned church service, the second he had knowledge they were going.
Missy, to your point, this is not politics. I specifically said this is nothing to do with politics. Pardon me. This is about the law. The politics in question that led to this is immaterial. We are discussing the law. If the criminal activity that occurred, the reason behind the criminal activity right now is immaterial. It's civil, civil arrest, but we are discussing the criminal law, the acts that resulted in criminal charges alone. The reason behind them are immaterial. We're looking at facts, we're looking at evidence, we're looking at circumstances, we're looking at charges, we're looking at potential punishments. That's all we're looking at. Has nothing to do with politics, specifically. And welcome.
Church service, it crossed the line from something that was potentially legal and potentially covered and potentially a peaceful protest to something that is absolutely not okay. Any communications between Lemon and the protest organizers are relevant, and it appears they already have proof of that because he live streamed the whole thing. When you live stream your crimes, just like Vitali or Somali or any other nuisance streamer, when you're out there going out and actually showing your crimes, it makes it very easy for the police, easy for law enforcement.
This is why people get so frustrated when you get the chaos live streamers out there literally recording the crimes and people are going, why the fuck are they not in jail? They literally committed a crime on stream. They literally just handed police evidence on a silver platter. Finally, we're starting to see it. Finally, we're starting to see that when criminals live stream their crimes, they get consequences. And I hope to God we start seeing more of these live streamers that go out, record themselves committing crimes for content that they get hooked up and tossed into the box.
Enforcement to convict you because they could just point to your stream and say, there you go, you committed this crime live in 4K. So I think there's a high likelihood of success based on the number of overt actions. You only need one to convict, but we're going to have to see. Obviously, that's on the DOJ.
YouTube, Nick, I'll get to that.
The burden of proof is on them, but I think Don Lemon has to seriously sweat over this. I don't know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Now, to the point that you guys were saying, which is like, if there's only a fine, then there's going to be like copycats. Number one, there's already copycats happening. Unfortunately, we are already starting to see copycats happening. I killed the chat by mistake. Whoopsie. What's going to happen? What will lock this down is not only if he receives a conviction, because don't forget, if it's a conviction, then he will have a criminal conviction on his record. If he spends 6 months in prison, he spends 6 months in prison. If he has to pay a $10,000 fine, he has to pay a $10,000 fine. That's not the fun part. Because especially if he gets a criminal conviction, that slings the door wide open for every single person in that church to file a civil lawsuit against every single person that was involved in that attack. And that is going to hurt them more than anything that they're going to see in the criminal court, unless they get a conviction which would throw them into prison for like 15, 20 years. The lawsuits, it's like I always say, they're not going to care. They're going to view going to prison, like even if they get the 6 months in prison, they're going to view that as sort of like a badge of honor. We're going to prison standing up for what we believe in. They will literally look at that as a badge of honor. What's going to hurt them is if they get slapped with 50 different lawsuits from every person in that church filing their individual lawsuits, class action lawsuit, whatever kind of lawsuit against every single person that was involved in this attack and taking them for everything they've got. Because the only way people listen to you these days, the only reason why people will sit up and pay attention to go, oh, I probably shouldn't do that again, is if you hit them in the wallet. And the $10,000 may or may not hurt them. Maybe they won't be able to do a GoFundMe for it, but I guarantee you that everyone, if they get a conviction and it's a $10,000 fine, every one of them will start going on to like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever and start begging for money, and people will send it to them. They have enough brain dead support from people all around the country that they will get the money to pay off that fine. However, if you get a bunch of class action lawsuits against them for millions of dollars, that's not so easy anymore. And that is what is going to actually get them to sit up and pay attention. The only way people will pay attention to anything these days, even when it comes to criminality, is if you hit them in the wallet. And I have a suspicion, once the criminal trial is over with, we are going to hear about all kinds of lawsuits getting levied against every single person that was involved in that attack. That is going to be the true justice when it comes to this case.